Hi everybody, welcome to another installment of the weekly predictions based on astrology. Let's first quickly recap my predictions for the previous week and which of those have come true. So let's start with the stock market direction. My prediction for the April of 8th was that the market will go up, and the market was mixed. Dow Jones went down on the Boeing news, and the other indexes were slightly up, I believe. On Tuesday, my prediction was that there will be a strong down move, and indeed that was the case. The market, as predicted, turned back up on Wednesday, and on Thursday I thought it might also be up, but it was slightly down. And on Friday I thought it was going to be a really big drop, and actually on Friday, even though it was a stressful day globally, we did have like a 6.8 earthquake. However, it didn't necessarily translate into negative news for the market, and market was up on Friday. So other news, as I said, there was a really big earthquake on Friday, 6.8 in Indonesia, and the entire week really saw increased seismic activity with a lot of 5, and over earthquakes, which are fairly significant, including one that hit Hawaii at 5.3. Then general predictions were for almost the entire past week that there will be increased focus on leaders, and in particularly leaders that have to do either something to do with military or act rashly, and or somebody who is maybe an athlete or basically a leader in the area of sports. And there were some news about that, in particularly in the US, the Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen had resigned on Monday. Then there was also news, and that is both, specific to the week, but also, I guess, is a manifestation of the larger trend of the Saturn conjunct Pluto, where older leaders that have been in power for a long time are being basically removed. We had a removal by the armed forces of the Sudanese leader that was in power for about 30 years. So that's kind of another manifestation that's, like I said, both fits under a local transit, well, not local, but rather shorter term transit, as well as this ongoing influence that is going to last through about 2020. Let's see. There was also a prediction that I had, and I think I covered in the last week, about some potential problems for either communication and transportation companies. And indeed, on Monday, there was news about basically Pinterest dialing down their expectations about their IPO and lowering their expected, stock price. Again, the overall sort of influence for last week that I was predicting was that there will be increased focus on oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, as well as movies, navy, sort of wet weather, bodies of water, shipments over water, as well as increased probability of a major disaster, earthquakes, and so forth, especially around the 12th. And in addition to earthquakes, we did indeed have ongoing news about the Houston facility, the IDC fuel storage facility, continuing having problems basically, and they're really responsible for, they have incurred large expenses, and they will have to be, continuing to do the cleanup, and there was a lot of contamination of nearby water and problems, obviously, with ships going through that channel that now have to be decontaminated, etc. So that's kind of ongoing, and that's a fairly large disaster. Once in 14 years, I've seen that number in the news. The scale of it is something that happens once about 14 years. And also we had, of course, like in the US, there was a fairly large sort of what's called a bomb cyclone in the Rockies, where they have rapidly changing air pressure, and it's accompanied by all kinds of, problems, floods, snow, fires, so all of the above. Then we also had, again, I think this was actually over the weekend, but there was a really bad, tornadoes hit Mississippi, and the disaster was declared there with about 15 tornadoes touching down, and people have died, unfortunately, and about 150 buildings have been damaged. So again, large scale kind of a unfortunate effect. So let's see, and there was also some another news that we had on Tuesday about, again, leaders. We had news about Dalai Lama being hospitalized with some chest infection in New Delhi. Let's see. And interestingly, on Wednesday, I saw there was news from UK that UK shipyard was evacuated amongst the reports about the bomb threat on or reports of a bomb on a nuclear submarine. And I thought that that's another kind of a manifestation that was definitely fitting both the influence of the week, again, with focus on sort of Neptunian type issues that have to do with water, bodies of water, and obviously any shipments that go for water or vehicles that are used for shipments, such as submarine, as well as kind of the ongoing theme of the Saturn conjunct Pluto, where Pluto rules things like nuclear power, nuclear waste, and of course Saturn has to do with like metals, large objects that are made of metal or stone, etc. And so we had when these planets are being triggered, or transits of these large, slow-moving planets that are in effects or background effect for months and years even, are triggered by slower-moving planets, we have sort of specific events taking place, which was the case here. And let's see, we also had some news and some predictions for the U.S. for Thursday. Friday rather, that there would be increased focus on IT, telecom, social media, aerospace, electronic gadgets, electric cars, and the companies that are specifically mentioned would be like Tesla, Boeing, or similar type of companies. And I actually didn't know about that, but apparently, I guess I'm living under the rock. But on Thursday there was a Falcon Heavy launch, and it went well, and I guess all 3 stages landed the way it should, so it was pretty significant achievement. And indeed, I guess one of the features of that rocket was that it was going really fast, and the predictions that I made was specifically based on a transit of Mars, which again, negative manifestation would have been that things kind of blow up and there's an accident because things are overheating or going fast, and vice versa. If, of course, in this case, there was a positive manifestation where there was a big achievement because things were able to go fast enough to kind of overcome, I guess, the gravity, and this large rocket was able to do whatever it was supposed to do. At the same time, we did have, even though it was on Thursday, Friday, but on Sunday, on the 14th, we did have news about Facebook and related, I guess, Instagram and WhatsApp related applications experiencing outage for about 2 hours. So significant news for US companies that relate again to sort of aerospace, electronics, and social media. In one case, we had a positive manifestation. Things were going super fast, but it was a good achievement. And at the same time, we maybe had something going off, overheating, quote unquote, maybe overloaded, and some other companies experienced outages. So let's see. Also on Thursday, and that's, by the way, on Thursdays, that's where that Sudanese leader was basically arrested in a coup. But also on Thursday, we had news about Assange being arrested. And like I said, there's this ongoing influence where we have conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. Saturn has to do with things like governments, large corporations, leaders that have been in power for a really long time and they're not going anywhere. And Pluto has to do with things like nuclear power, nuclear waste, anything that's underground, but also spying, hacking, secret or manipulative activities. And so, of course, when you have government and spying and hacking, and Assange's, I guess, one of his accusations is that, I guess, he's leaking documents that compromise or expose, things that government does in some negative light. Whatever your opinion is, completely neutral from my perspective. I'm just commenting on that. This is a manifestation of, indeed, the energies that have been triggered, by faster moving transits, and the influences that represent the Saturn conjunction Pluto were triggered and manifested as something like a leaker, I guess, of government documents obtained through some, spying or hacking methods was arrested. So let's see. And on Friday, as I mentioned, there was a really big earthquake and in Indonesia. And another prediction that I made also, I guess specifically for US, was, and I guess for the world as well, that there will be increased focus on like oil, chemicals, and that there may be some agreements or contracts that affect those areas, and that there may be some discussions, arguments over the value of related products and businesses. So on Friday, there was news about Chevron acquiring Anadarko Petroleum, and that was again announced on Friday, and you would say, and it was fairly large, I guess $33 billion acquisition, so I wouldn't say that there were necessarily arguments over that, but I guess there certainly were comments on whether or not, from analysts and I guess investors, whether or not that was a worthwhile acquisition. So again, sort of large-scale events that specifically cover those areas that I predicted did take place, and more or less on the same exact dates, especially on the 12th. Let's see, and as I said, over the weekend we had these tornadoes in Mississippi, but then also on Monday, again I'm recording this on Monday, yet again another working weekend for me. So on Monday there was, obviously everybody I'm sure have seen this by now, a fire in Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and that to me again is another kind of manifestation of something that really fits well under Saturn-Pluto conjunction that is again being triggered by faster moving planets. So Saturn, as I said before, it has to do with things like, of course, mountains, rocks, but also large structures that are made of stone and or steel, and things that have really withstood the length of time. So something that's really old, again, could be a leader who's really old, like literally like they're in their late, 90s or something, 70s, etc. onwards. So they're older, they've been in power for a long time. And then Pluto is something that kind of devastates, like nuclear power, nuclear blast, or terrorist attack, or something that's like completely demolishes things like this phoenix, that burns and rises from the ashes. And literally we had 150-year-old cathedral that's obviously landmark, has been standing there for a long time, and it catches fire, and likely they were able to save at least a large part of the structure, and now obviously it will be rebuilt. So the Pluto rules this whole reorganization, just like in some of these countries, like in Kazakhstan, leader after like 28, 30 years resigns or leaves, and now there will be some restructuring, I guess. At least that's the idea. And in Sudan, same thing. So the leader in this case was kind of removed in a coup, but again after 30 years. And other things that we can expect along the same lines in upcoming months, when again the specific like Mars or some other faster moving planets will trigger those kind of ongoing influences that are sitting there. We can maybe hear about leaders stepping down, somebody who's maybe like an investor, really known, and they're older, or leaders, again, who have been in power for a long time, they may leave on their own, they may be removed, or it could be, really old building that, like in this case, we also have conjunction of the nodes with Saturn and Pluto. Nodes usually give some sort of notoriety. It's either a really famous person, or it's something that affects really a large number of people, or occurs in a public place, such as, an airport, conference, stadium. So in this case, obviously, it's something that's a well-known landmark, as I said, the Notre Dame, that is, and it became like a really well-known kind of a event, or rather, there are a lot of people that were watching news about it burning and commenting on it, etc. So other manifestations that we can expect would be, again, maybe not one building that is really old burning, but rather many old buildings being destroyed in, say, a large earthquake. And they, obviously that might affect large numbers of people. With Pluto there, it could be something that, again, burns or is destroyed to the point where you can't really save it. It just really needs to be rebuilt to make it qualitatively new and different. Or it could literally involve, nuclear waste. So earthquake, as I said before, triggers, maybe some sort of a fire or collapse of some sort of storage facility or nuclear power plant, and so devastation could come through that. even in the case of the Houston fire, this ITC fuel storage facility, the fumes basically that were released over some, I guess, days, if not weeks, of those petrochemicals burning actually have cancerogenic effects. And Pluto again rules things like cancer radiation. So indeed, those kind of disasters, they can be kind of triggered by maybe chemicals burning, but the result can be that, there's increased instances of cancer in that area. So again, effect is widespread, but may not, just like hacking, may not necessarily be obvious immediately. And so the important thing here is also to note which areas, or rather which areas of the world were affected, because these planetary influences, like I said, they're ongoing, and we will have additional sort of planets triggering them in the near future. Will be like end of May and June, and then September. So if we note places like France, for example, the Yellow Vests protests, and now the Notre Dame burning, so we may witness kind of additional events occurring there again, coming up in, say, end of May, June, and then September. Similarly, like in New Zealand, there was some official caught in some webcam, I guess, in the bathroom, something like that. Something truly weird. But again, it's also a place like Christchurch that's prone to earthquake, and had an attack there. So places that seem to be triggered when this Saturn and Pluto conjunction is being triggered by faster moving planets, they may be expected to be triggered again in the upcoming months, again, say June, September. So places and the type of events that have occurred around April, we may hear again about issues, similar types of issues in the same places, again, come, June and come September. And whenever, later on as well, whenever like January of 2020 as well, for example. So now let's move on to the predictions for this week. And the global background influence, as I just mentioned, is with Saturn and Pluto being there, continues. So government reshuffling, strong probability of strong earthquakes, accidents, violent terrorist attacks. This week, the highest probability is on the 19th of April. And ongoing prediction for the US is that Judge Ginsburg may either leave or experience some sort of difficulties in June, and I believe May and June of 2019. And also this week for China, I guess continuing increased probability of earthquakes, disasters, and also focus on like oil, navy, pharmaceuticals, pollution, as well as like secrets, deception, or also long distance transportation and international agreements and international expansion. As far as the specific predictions for the individual dates of the week, on Monday, I was expecting the market to go up. I was fairly confident it will be a happy, kind of a optimistic day with some hopeful news about the international agreements. Now I actually have seen what the market did today. It was very slightly down, so that obviously did not come true. However, I did also make prediction. It was specifically for the US, but actually I guess it was affecting more Canadian companies, that there might be some increased news about like specifically oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, drugs, Navy, wet weather, which I guess we did have in the US, news, about all these devastated tornadoes, etc. But I specifically mentioned that there may be some news about the drop in the prices of the related products, or that their value, may be questions like, is it basically worth it, or is it, too kind of unstable? And indeed, I specifically pointed out that it might be about cannabis-related businesses, and there were news on Monday about a whole bunch of, I guess, cannabis stocks, or stocks of cannabis growers, primarily I guess Canadian in origin, that they went down, like 10%, 15%, 4%, like significant kind of, I guess, sea of red across the board for those kind of stocks. And that was exactly my call for Monday, Tuesday. So then for Tuesday, April 16th, I think that the market may go down. Drop may be because of there because of some concerns about the instability of the outcome of some agreement, or if there's agreement signed, like some international agreement, that there may be concerns that it's too vague or the details are lacking. On Wednesday, I also expect the market to go down, about 55-60% chance, or certainty rather. On Thursday, I think there's a slight 55% probability that may go up, and then on Friday, I think it would actually go down. Friday looks like the most stressful day of the week. That said, as last week, sometimes it can be a stressful day geopolitically, but it doesn't necessarily relate in the market going down. Hence, my probability for Friday stock going down is 60-65%. And so also specific news for Thursday, Friday for the US. I think there may be some news about communication transportation industries coming up, and or some agreements or contracts. And those may be about the value, or disagreements, they may be about the value of some businesses or services, especially related to healthcare and or governmental contracts and services. So maybe some, I don't know, governmental workers, or somebody who's kind of providing services like teachers, postal workers, I don't know, police, that they basically think that maybe they're undervalued, maybe there's some strikes or some contracts being reevaluated because there's concern that maybe things are overpaid, or maybe, again, services are undervalued. Or it could be, healthcare insurance, again, kind of concerns about what is the right price, basically, and the price will not be right, as in that there may be concerns or arguments whether or not something is over or undervalued. Or the workers' compensation, minimal wage, topics like that may be kind of in the news for the US Thursday, Friday. Let's see, and for Friday, generally speaking, for global, influence, I think that there will be a day of surprises, increased probability of variety of surprising news about either leaders or projects, especially related to IT, high-tech, telecoms, electronic devices, electricity, providers like power plants, companies like Boeing, aerospace in general. So we either will hear about some projects being canceled, or vice versa, or leaders, removed or replaced, or vice versa. There may be some exciting news about new projects that maybe nobody had, seen coming, or some new contracts being signed, some satellites or something like that, something that's new, innovative, and exciting. But like I said, or it could be a surprising change where the leadership of some company of one of those areas maybe suddenly changes, and that may raise concerns about the stability of the related businesses. So if maybe there were concerns about somebody's leadership, and leader was removed, the stock obviously may go up because of that, or vice versa. If suddenly somebody quits, that the stock may go down because of the concerns about whether or not, it means that things are unstable. For the most part, I think sort of my prediction is that there will be more concerns about stability rather than excitement about somebody leaving or a new project. Hence, my prediction for Friday is down. And lastly, for China, I think that there may be increase again, especially on Friday, probability of stressful news about steel, metals, minerals, mining, earthquakes, and governmental structures, and or established kind of leaders, so Saturnian type things. I think that there may be accidents also, or rather increased probability of accidents, disagreements, fights, explosions, attacks, fires, and other problems. And these issues may kind of challenge the status quo and again establish leadership, and there may be a call for action, there may be need to react really fast. Maybe there's a military threat, or there's an accident or fire that really needs a quick reaction, but unfortunately the reaction may not be fast enough because maybe something needs to go through some process, or some leaders not flexible enough to respond to that, or maybe there's some existing laws that kind of basically are not allowing things to proceed forward, and so that might create some friction, or maybe things can kind of be postponed for too long. Maybe there's some sort of concerns about delivery of steel or steel prices, and the reaction needs to come from leadership to address that, but things may not be happening fast enough, and or plans that are associated with these areas to maybe rebuild the structure, or to fix some issue that relates to, again, businesses in the area of steel, mining, metals, minerals, may be postponed until a later time where maybe reaction is needed faster. So I also updated the sort of glance ahead section to kind of expand my prediction for the end of April, where we, again, yet another period is coming of increased probability of earthquakes, mudslides, building collapses, and other disasters, especially like oil spills, gas leaks, problems with oils, petrochemicals, again, maybe getting on fire, or some oil rigs getting on fire, contamination of water, etc., to begin on April 22nd and last through about the 26th, and then a separate period I added that will be lasting from about April 29th through May 2nd, where again probability of earthquakes and mudslides would be, or building collapses will be high. However, there may also be increased news about either stance or stalling or aggressive negotiations about like some international contracts or mergers and acquisitions that involve really large established corporations, and or there may be corporations that specifically relate to steel, mining, minerals, coal, and those kind of industries. So those players may be discussing something, but things may not be kind of gelling at that point, and it either may result in tensions, frictions, where one company is pushing another, or it may be that things are just postponed and they're kind of dragging on. And I also added a little bit more on another sort of a time period where I expect some significant events to occur, which is May 3rd through 10th, and I think that around the 7th through 9th of May, there may be increased probability of news about major international contracts and agreements. So if something was kind of building up to that, it may culminate around that time. So these agreements may relate specifically to communication and transportation industries, as well as retail sales. And again, it may be related to like large-scale construction, or again, steel, minerals, mining, etc. And at that time, again, May 7th through the 9th, we may expect some significant changes in the value of like related either businesses or products or commodities or steel, like metals, like different like iron ore or certain minerals, and quite possibly precious stone of some sort. So there may be increased news about those companies, those type of commodities, and their value. And so these may be affected to a greater degree than usual, and we may possibly see, or rather expect, the drop in price of those. And so that was it. And if I was talking too fast, you can read all about that on my blog at postunka.com. I do post that usually the day before I record this blog, and or if you just want to read through it at your own pace, please visit me there. And until next week, I'll talk to you guys later.